Usually a ridiculous degree to which flames are typically overvalued. For an example of transposing, using default values of 1-1 main stat, 3-1 attack, 8-1 all stat. Flame rate endgame equivalency is my divergence from that, but one I'm comparing like to like, so it doesn't matter much. So 9 also is marginally different. So I'm going to give the code at the end to play by yourself. I'm also familiar with the calculus of whether you'd even want to transpose overuse a black bean mark forever is up for debate, but I'm not going down that road here. Well, it goes for dominators as well, right? Dominators into Sweetwater. The main argument, though, I mean, we'll probably just come down to whatever I've already been saying, but let's see. XX Dexless Snee XX. Oh no, typoed the IGN. Finally dropped a pop mark. When did this become a thing? When did people say I dropped something when they mean something dropped for me and when they got something? When did that happen? You do my hair today? Clap? Nope, I have not done my hair probably in like 10 days. Streamer guy times. Feels good, man. Just put on a headset, hair is done. Time to flame sucker transpose. They're currently using a black bean mark with a flame score of 74. This costs about 230 mil worth of red flames. This looks like a big number, but that's like 20 flames, right? A little bit more. 25 maybe. Which is reasonable for someone in the early to mid game in terms of progression. 74? Yeah, that's about like early-ish CRA score, yeah. You might add that this is a really low flame, and that's true. And it makes... I don't think it's really low. On like Sakum accessory stuff, I would aim for like 50-ish. 45 to 50-ish. So like 74 on bean mark, that seems pretty reasonable. It makes the dumpster brain arguments of flaming harder, even worse mathematically, as you'll soon see. Lex's friend is curious about how efficient they gain per billion of meso spend. You're also interested in how much gains they get from upgrading in different areas. Here's what that looks like. Is this like... What is this line? Is it the flame value? So 74 flame score, you'd get a stat gain comparable to pushing Sweetwater from CRA 21 to 22 and Arcanes from 19 to 21 if still on 104 flame score. Maybe stop here in terms of their progression. Wait, I've never heard of anyone... Oh, wait. Okay, this makes it sound like he's trying to get a 104 flame score on a black bean mark. You'd never really do that, right? Treasure Gains is the single most inefficient Star Force upgrade and is equivalent to going for a 111 flame. This grid alone is also very nice because... I guess I haven't like really double checked on all the numbers, but this would be the order that I would like do all this stuff in as well. Although I tend to go for 21 Arcanes before 22 Sweetwater, but as you can tell, that's actually really, really close. And that would be the next step after that for me. But I guess this depends on backups, right? And again, this is just cost-wise. I would say Arcanes to 21 is more valuable than Sweetwater to 21. Because you will keep the Arcanes even after you upgrade them, and then Sweetwater could get replaced by Pitched, right? So that values it in. Which I think, I mean, I hope that he kind of takes it into account, but the main thing, why you can't just look at stat per billion, and you have to take into account how long are you going to keep the pieces, and what is the replaceability rate of the things, right? Because the main reason we go for really high flames is not just because efficiency on the flame, but is because for a lot of people, you're never going to get pitched, boss. So it totally makes sense for that flame score to be around the point where you would get like 22 arcanes. That makes more sense. But even then, that's a 105. So the argument would be like something like a 104 or 105 makes more sense than telling people to get like 115. I had always been saying like 105 is like a good number to aim for. 105 to 115, you know, depending on how you want to go. Plus 115 if you're just like absolutely mental, I guess. I had recently started saying like 110 to 15, but yeah, I guess what probably will happen is that I'll just go back to saying 105 or higher, basically. Which for me is just a shift of 5 stat both ways. Because I like to think I'm pretty responsible with the advice surrounding this kind of stuff. Yes. Of course, another friend isn't going to be a 19 arcane scrub. They're not even going to be 21 arcane scrub. They're going for 22 all their arcanes, 1 burst Kalos, and flex their eternal gear, obviously. They're going to push for 111 plus flames, right? Absolutely wrong. The efficiency of this flaming upgrade is dependent on the flame you already have. Shortly into their flaming session, Dexterity has a 40, luck 5, attack 6% all stat flame, a score of 103. But again, yeah, that's not really a 103, but that's like the number that he's using. Although I still kind of disagree because it's singular movement, but I would say that's a 109, and that's very cleanly above the 105. So for me, that's like a brain dead transpose. Plus, if you're going for 111 and you hit a 109, you should always keep it, because if you're trying to go from 109 to 110, you have to pay the full price of 110 for just 1 star gain, right? Which is kind of the argument he's getting at here. Whether you have an item that has 0 flame score or one that has 110 on it, if you're trying to go for 111, it's the same cost, right? So if you're already close to it, you should never be rerolling over that if you're already that close, because it's never worth the money. Is basically baseline argument, which is smart, of course, yeah. So this is like if you already have a 95, I guess. Is that this? This is what the previous plot looks like when using 103 as a baseline. You might notice that it is literally comparable, efficient to push past 103 flame score as it is to black cube your emblem for 33% attack. Again, it's kind of conflating. In terms of efficiency, yes, but the expected cost is way lower, right? This is like saying, you know, investing into like a shitty stock is about as efficient as like is like less efficient than buying a house. It's like, that's true, but everyone can, you know, buy a shitty stock, but not everyone can buy a whole house, right? The amount of money that you need when you're going on stat per billion, that's a good way of looking at the efficiency, but it's not a good look at looking at what is the access to people of making that investment. Sometimes people have to make suboptimal investments because that's the only one they have access to, right? You're kind of what this is kind of taking into account, or what the numbers it's looking at is like, what if someone has infinite money at their disposal? What should they be doing with that money? But people don't have infinite money, right? So, yeah. Closer to 115. Yeah, but then again, he would just shift all his numbers upwards, like he was talking about before. There's a really funny one too. Like if people see like a flame that is 20 main stat, 20 secondary stat, 20 tertiary stat, 6 attack, 7 all stat, people will say that's a garbage flame. But that's like better than what most people should be aiming for. Seeing this or future reflaming run 10 is nearly 5 times less efficient than the least efficient Star Force upgrade. 5 times less efficient. Well, that's not what he meant. Of course, it's like 1/5 as efficient. 5 times less efficient is minus 4 times as efficient, which is not like maths, but maths and English for Americans is always hard. A future Kalos Courser decided to save this mezzo and put it towards achieving their goal of 22 star arcanes someday. This also, by the way, is something that nobody should really actively be aiming for. This is really like a really good way of blowing all your money. And ask anyone who's gotten 22 arcanes, like, yeah, 1 or 2 of them probably go 21 to 22 and you're good. And then the other ones, you just boom like 8 more times trying to get back up there. Yeah, no, for me it makes more sense to go another character to 21 arcanes rather than making 22 on 1. But yeah, if you're aiming for Kalos, sure. I decided going back to the 74 blame score being low. This is what the plot looks like if you're replacing an 84 black bean mark. In case you were serious, is there? Wait. If you're replacing... Going back to 74 flame score being low, this is what the plot looks like replacing an 84. What does the 84 come from? Did he mistype or... Or is this 84 or 74? I mean, it's probably going to be a comparable graph, I guess. Oh. Measure carries a Sword Slayer. Nice. I got the first arcane armor piece. Nice. I start flaming and land on a 124 score. Scout hero as their guild if it's good enough and someone says no to settle below 140. That is absolutely fucking stupid. My goal, I'm pretty sure with my progression grid for numbers for flame score, yeah, is 125. So that's right there where I said it. I don't know, like these numbers is just like from experience for me. I never did any of like analysis on data and numbers like this. Yeah, as you can see, it would be abysmal to try to flame past that because you have to pay the whole thing, right? Get him next to. It'd also be a misunderstanding of how they calculate flame score. Yeah, because somebody somewhere one time said that all stat equals 8, even though it never really does. That was just kind of like a ballpark in the beginning when flames came out. And we have since gotten better understanding of how high those numbers actually go. And you'll have people just saying like that all stat equals 8 or something. That's just not what a flame score is, right? And sometimes people are like, well, that's just the number I use, so it doesn't really matter. But it does matter because the number is just wrong, you know? The number doesn't emulate anything. It doesn't emulate an approximate stat. It doesn't emulate... It's not correct within the balance of the flames. So you know, use the correct number. But yeah, I think I go over this in pretty much all of my progression sessions as well, that flames are really something you kind of just do on the side. Like, not like you work on that on the side, but like if you get some, you slowly bring your flames up, but you never really actively stop and like buy a whole bunch of flames. First of all, there's no cube sales, so, no flame sales, so that's one of the big reasons. If there was like 50% off flames, then maybe you'd go a little bit harder. But the second thing is that it's really not that important how good your flames are as long as they're not absolute trash. The only thing is really important for, I would say, is your weapon and if you're going to be transposing. And again, for transposing, it's only important because you're basically trying to get the flame of an endgame item on an earlier game item. And if you don't want to have to wait forever until you can do the transposing, that's the only thing I would personally buy flames for, together with your weapon. Because your weapon's value, the flame value on a weapon is just so insanely high. Completely pants on head, stupid as pushing past 103 for transposing. Anyone who looks at these plots is still advocates for reflaming 17-star arcanes past 124. Yeah, no. Even like a 120 or like a 118 or something, I would keep on a 17-star arcane. But like for me personally, if I'm on a mule that gets an arcane, I might push a little bit harder than 124. But that's because I have a high income in flames. I'm always searching for something to flame, like I barely have anything to do, right? But you want to make sure that you are... If you're someone who has an income, even with the dropped rates of like 20 to 30 flames a week, plus you have access to the event source, all the flames, Legion shop, all those flames, your standard for flames is going to be higher. But it's very important to not press that standard that you have for your personal situation onto people who are in a completely different situation. And I like to think I'm pretty good at that with advice and with the progression sessions that I do. But yeah, maybe other people just kind of forget that they're just in a different part of the cycle, you know. But I figured that formula for Tower of Awe stupid pills and is ODing on them in real life. Nice. He's trying to throw some memes in. I can appreciate that. Save your mezzo. Flaming gets super expensive at the top end. It's just not worth it to overspend. Be reasonable with your flames. Stop griefing new players by setting unrealistic expectations for their flames. Definitely true. This is May 2021. People don't have literally hundreds of thousands of composition flames. This is another one, and I kind of had to fight for this as well. Because people were saying, like, when we got all the compensation, people were telling me to, like, increase all my numbers. I put 165 in here kind of for the memes. But people were saying that I should put the lower end here at, like, 125, and I should put this at 140. I was like, we're getting like a singular injection of like 20,000 flames. That doesn't mean that the standard of what efficiency is of how far you should aim for has changed. It just means that the sky's the limit for you personally on whatever stuff you want to do. But it doesn't mean that the standard of efficiency of where to spend your mezzo it has in any way shifted. Yeah, so main thing I would say is that this might be a little bit of a counter jerk, you know? Because you like have people flaming, and then you have people just... As always, what you're going to have is like, if people say like, oh, 105 flame is really good, then people are going to be like, okay, 105 is considered good. I want to have a really good item that's better than everyone else's. I'm going to aim for 110. And then once more people are like, oh, they're aiming for 110 because, you know, they just want to have a really good item. I'm going to aim for 115. And then it just... People just slowly start... Because they've been even saying that people should start aiming for 120 plus. Just because somebody ended up getting a 120 plus, that doesn't mean that that's reasonable to get, right? If 1 million people use a flame, then there's a very good chance that there is one flame that's a 1 in 10 million flame that ends up rolling. That's a 1 in 10 chance that ends up happening. And if that does, that doesn't mean that therefore should become the new standard, right? And I think that's kind of what's happened over time. And especially, you know, with the compensation. Because if you use 1,000 flames, right, there's a very good chance you get like a 1 in 10,000 flame somewhere. Or that someone gets one, and then yeah, that shouldn't shift the balance of what you go for. So yeah, I think in general it's probably fine to transpose on lower end, but remember that if you know you're playing for the end game and you know you're going to be making that money, I also don't want to really advocate for people to say like, oh, I'm going to transpose at like a 90 flame score, and then I'm just going to transpose again when I get another piece, because some people will just not get a second pep mark. And that argument, I think, will always stand, is that you're trying to flame for the endgame on an item that isn't endgame. Yes, that's going to be a desync. But eventually, if you're going to be 22ing it, eventually if you don't get pitched, and eventually if you're like 22 starred and 3-line potential, the only thing you can min-max anymore at that time is going to be the flame. And you just need to have that flame done before. And you can't really escape that. So some of this is probably going to stay. But I think in general, yeah, for newer players, probably shouldn't be telling them. If anything, probably should aim a little bit higher on the pep mark, and maybe on the Dominator it's not as bad. Because for the Dominator, you can definitely remake it again later, and that's not too bad. Although a lot of people hate Sun Commercy, so I don't want to tell everyone that they should be doing Commercy for the rest of their life. A lot of people tend to not like that daily. Just remember to level up your boat, get the Dreadnought, okay? Get the level 3 boat, and then you can just slam the earliest voyages and make like 50 dinars a day super easily. But yeah, it's good to have it visualized as the value of the flames like that. The numbers might be a little bit different, you know, like he mentioned here. It might be not quite that, but it is still quite eye-opening to have the so that you can see like where that lands. And in general, this is also like a decently good thing to look at, just to see like what kind of stuff you would prioritize to be upgrading, right? I think there was a Reddit thread made about this a long time ago as well that had like all of the types of upgrade you could make ordered in yeah, I mean, it's like stat per billion, or you could do everything into flame score basically, right? Maybe if all the other things were also mentioned in flame score, it would be even more accurate, as long as you use the same flame score as here. But yeah, Data, I see your question, but I'm trying to get through this part first. So yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen people pushing, but a lot of times, like here's my general advice. Like if you're pretty new to the game and you're asking someone for advice, when they give you some advice, I would always ask one follow-up question on like, why is that? Or want to get an insight. If you're asking advice on like, what should I aim for? And someone just gives you a random fucking number, and you're just like, okay, cool, thanks. And you take that as enough advice, then that's kind of on you. That's kind of your fault as the advice asker. Because now, if you have another item, you're going to have to ask again, right? you didn't really get help there. You just got like a temporary band-aid on your one little problem you had, but you didn't fix the overall problem. And your overall problem is, I don't know how flames work. I don't know what flame score is. I don't know what the efficiency of flames is. But also, I don't want to figure it out. If you don't want to figure it out, that's cool. But you're going to end up sometimes getting bad advice that you're going to end up taking. So make sure that you decide for yourself that you either want to know how it works, and then once you do know, you can make your own damn mind up, or you don't want to know how it works, and then sometimes you're going to get bad advice, probably from other people who also didn't know how it worked and also just copied what the other guy told them, right? Because a lot of times you're going to hear something, and it's just someone is going to tell you something, and it might be decently accurate, might be somewhat accurate, might be wrong, but they just heard it from someone else, and that person just heard it from someone else, and after a while you get a game of like Chinese whispers or broken telephone, whatever you call it, and some stuff that just isn't terribly accurate might be oozing down and sliding down the hill into your ears, and the less you, the more you take things at face value without really the motivation behind it and where it's coming from, the more likely you are to end up with something that isn't terribly accurate anymore. And that's probably what happened here, is that things just got like exacerbated a little bit over time, and I imagine that's what happened to this. I wasn't really keeping track of the Reddit on this type of advice, so I wasn't aware that this was quote-unquote that much of a thing. But it's good to know that it's addressed, and the maths are good to see. And I don't know, people like the nerd maths, I guess, because it got 400 upvotes. But yeah, general message is good. But don't, just make sure you know where it's coming from, and have all the pieces of information before you make your decision, right? All right, just wanted to go over that for a little bit.